Hi, I'm the Gadget Guru, Andy Pard. You're watching TheVog.net. I'm here at Harrah's Hotel and Casino in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana. And look who I ran into, the one and only, the legendary Bobby G. Now, Bobby just happened to be down here getting ready to take a ride. In fact, you're in the middle of a ride. His lovely wife, Nash, who you met on a previous video, is going to be joining him shortly, and then they're headed off to the West Coast. But Bobby, before we get started, I know you're here with your 2013 Victory Cross Country 15th Anniversary Limited Edition, which, by the way, is a true limited edition. But let's take a minute and go through the victories that you've owned in the past. I mean, can you go back that far?
Starting in 2009, I first bought a Nest Vision. After that, in 10, when the cross countries came out, I bought the first version of those in black, which I later gave to my son. Then I bought a 2012 Nest Vision. It didn't work out so well.
Yeah, if you remember that one, he didn't like that one as much as the previous Nest Vision you owned. Yes.
And in between that, I had a 2000 Harley Ultra and a 2008 Harley Ultra. Loved both of those bikes.
And by the way, if you want to see videos, many of those we've documented on VOG Member Spotlight videos. On YouTube, just go to the VOG.net channel, or on the VOG, just hit videos and VOG Member Spotlights. You'll see a number of them. Sorry, that was my plug. Now, back to your bikes.
Okay. After the experience with the 12 Ness, I traded it on a 2012 Kings Mountain Indian Vintage. And I still have that bike along with this one.
So those are the two that you have in your garage right now. Your 2012 Indian, and you have the Indian Chief model, as well as the 2013 15.
Yeah, the vintage model.
The vintage, excuse me. You know, I'm still learning my way around all the Indian lineup. What brought you to victory in the first place back in 2009?
The Nest Vision.
So what were you riding before that made you decide it's time to get a new bike?
At that time, I was riding Honda VTX 1800 Retro, and I'd pretty much ridden the snot out of it at that point. I put 65,000 miles on it, so it was time for a new one. Now,
you are known for your travel logs, and if you haven't seen them, just go to the VOG and look up member name. Just use the search feature, Bobby G, all one word, and take a look at some of his travel logs. And you're going to see that you have, and I'm going to say this from a journalist's point of view, you have a wonderful way of describing your trips by using individual pictures in just a sentence or two. And I have to tell you, that is not easy to do. People like me, I can take all the space in the world and write. But to be able to get your thoughts and feelings and your environment out in just a sentence is quite a skill. How did you learn how to do that?
You learn to pick and choose. There's so much happens in a given day, but you've got to pare it down to that 2 pictures per day or 3 pictures per day. And the captions just come to me as I see the picture.
Do they come to you while you're riding or when you get back and you're looking at the photos?
Usually while I'm riding. And while I'm riding, it's a bigger story than it is when I finally put it on the blog.
But I'm going to tell you, and a lot of people, your threads are very well viewed. And there's some other people who've really done a nice job too, such as UK Paul. But you've really been the leader on the VOG of coming up with this travelogue technique. And it's a great way to follow in your travels. I know it takes time. I want to thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you. The key for me is just keeping it in a short story form. Like I say, cutting it down to that 2 pictures a day, 3 pictures a day.
So that works well for those of us with short attention spans, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you say something? Oh, short attention span.
Yeah, sure does.
Okay, well, let's talk about this bike right now. And again, we're going to get to your Indian in both the 2013 and your experience with the 14 in just a moment. But let's take a look at this. And I have to tell you, I don't know if the camera does it justice, and I don't know if you've taken the time to see one of these limited edition models. But this paint pops. This is the, Antares red, black, a gold pinstripe. Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you think of the paint quality versus other victories you've owned in the past?
The paint quality on these is really good, and what drew me to it, and I have to correct you, it's a 2014, not a 13.
Oh, you know, this is one of those things. They introduced it mid-2013, and you're right, it was a 14. I stand corrected by the big guy.
This is the same paint scheme that was put on the original anniversary edition Vision, and I seen one a week ago. They still look new. It doesn't seem to show scratches in the same way, or the fine spider webbing that the other paint jobs do.
Well, let me point out that, in the video, if you get up close, or when you see some of the close-up shots we're doing here, it is a bit dirty. But let me explain why. You just came in on a trip. You've been all over the country, and I know when I flew into New Orleans, yes, I flew, I didn't ride, it was pouring raining, and that was the same rain you rode in on. So I guess that brings up the point, not only why is it dirty, but how does this thing do in heavy rain?
Really well, and you saw that yesterday. There was like 3 inches of rain on the roadway. So,
okay, let's get more back into the bike. You've owned a cross country before. You've had 2 Nest Visions. How does this bike fit in the bikes you've owned into the lineup?
I've always found the Cross to be a little bit easier to handle than the Vision. It's lighter in the steering area. I didn't know whether I would like the lowers. I'm really not thrilled to death with the shape of them. They could have been toned into the bike a little bit better.
So how would you change them? What would be the Bobby G mod if the factory's listening? What should they do different on cross-country tour models, let's say, in the future?
Actually, you know what looks great is the forged bars with the insets.
Really? But you owned a bike with the forged bars, didn't you?
Yes, but they didn't have the insets at that time. They only had the soft cloth ones. If you take a look at Kingpin's bike, he has a set of the inserts, and they just flow right with the bike.
Do they now? This down here, you have some adjustable air management down here, some wind management. Is it effective?
Yeah, it's really effective. That's interesting. This windshield, this is the Clockworks. I rode it on a dealer's bike without lowers. Hated it. Caught wind square in the face. It was like having no windshield at all. Now on this bike, with the lower management and the small wings on the fairing, I'm able to adjust them to the point where this feels as good as my 13-inch windshield.
A number of people have said, especially when you get into warmer climates, such as we are here in New Orleans, that when you're riding around, that the best way to do it is not to open them all the way up, but just to open them up a bit. And I guess that forces the air in a little bit more concentrated. What's your thought?
That's correct.
And so when they're wide open, they just don't give you as much of a cooling type feel when you're at speed?
You're not getting as much airflow through it. At that point, it's more slower airflow. So it does kick the heat to your legs if you got them wide open.
Well, to jumping around, we know that there's some storage in here. And by the way, when you weren't looking, I did open one up. I noticed you had your garage door remote in there. If you get home and your garage door is open, it's my fault, okay? Just thought you'd want to know that. We try to do things above the board here on the VOG. Well, we know that there's storage here, as you've seen. Let's talk about the rest of the storage. The cross countries really made a hit with the hard bag storage. I know you and your wife travel around the country on this. What's your thought compared to the Vision storage-wise?
I know you know that I travel light, so I didn't really have a problem with the Vision. With any of these bikes, as long as you have the liner, that gives you basically your dimensions that you're going to put in. The cross side bags are enormous, and you already know what I think of these back things. I only leave it on this bike because it's part of the flow.
So have you taken the bag off, or the trunk off of this bike yet?
No.
And how does it handle with the trunk? Again, you've gone trunked and untrunked.
Right. It's fine, but when I jump on my son's 10, it feels lower, quicker, sportier immediately.
Let's talk. Okay, so we know, and is it fair of me to say, you're happy with the storage that you get on this bike?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, if you look at other bikes in the future, if they did not have nearer storage, would you feel like you're getting shortchanged?
Yeah, I've been spoiled by it.
Spoiled is a good word. Okay, let's talk about comfort. Now, the first thing you notice, the seat on this is an upgraded seat. I don't know what you call it, but it's type of a mesh embossed or some sort of, I don't know if this is leather or vinyl. Why don't you tell us about it as well as the comfort characteristics?
It's vinyl. What do they call that? Metal mesh?
Pleather?
No, no, the pattern.
Like a carbon fiber style?
Yeah, it's a carbon fiber style. It's got a little more give to it than the other seats. On a long trip, especially in warm weather, it can wear on you a little. I tend to find, because I came from, like I say, a VTX, my Indian has a very stiff seat. I'm comfortable on those all day long. So.
And all day long to you is 800 to, what, 1,100 miles?
Yeah, on average.
I mean, and again, for those who haven't followed Bobby G's travels or his travelogues, you like to ride. I mean, this is not a bar hopper. If it is, it's Denver one day, Chicago the next.
Well, I knew I was coming down here, and I wasn't to be here until Tuesday. And then OT had asked for a T-shirt from the AVR, so I said, volunteered to go out and get one and look at the Indians while I was there.
Okay, that gives us a good point for a transition right here, because we're going to get back and talk more about Bobby G's 2014 15th anniversary Victory Cross Country Tour limited edition, and boy, is that a mouthful. But you also own a 2013, the last of the previous generation Indian Chiefs, and you just got to take a look at the 2014 Indian lineup at the AVR. So I tell you what we're going to do. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to take a quick commercial break. If you're watching on the VOG, we're going to go to black and be right back. Okay, we're back with the legendary Bobby G and his 2014 Victory Cross Country 15th anniversary limited edition. By the way, which number is this?
137.
137. And here in New Orleans, you kind of made a side stop down from Canada, an unplanned stop, as you said, to pick up OT, which is our lovable one thumb, a T-shirt from the AVR. My understanding is, and please correct me where I'm wrong, that you had sight unseen placed an order for a 2014 Chieftain. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you go to the AVR, and evidently that's the first place you're going to run to. Am I on so far?
Yep.
And let's hear your thoughts.
I think this is the first time Polaris has made a motorcycle that photographs better than it looks in real life.
Really? I mean, you know, because I remember we communicated as soon as the release came out. You had contacted your dealer the next day. What happened in your mind? And remember, this comes from a guy who already owns a 2012 Kings Mountain Indian that I understand you're very happy with. Why do you say it photographs better than it looks?
I was really impressed with the blue color in all the photographs. In actuality, I don't like it as much when I see it for real.
Did they have other colors on display there?
Yeah, they had the black and a red. Not the Chieftain in the red. The black tends to look a little better because the white walls, spoked wheels, and the chrome pop.
It kind of gave you a contrast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what were your other observations on it?
My Kings Mountain Indian is built more for the tall rider. My position is very much like it is on this bike. I'm stretched right out, got plenty of room. So I expected the same thing because the dimensions are fairly much the same. They were geared more towards the rider 5'6" to 5'10".
So it's built for me, exactly. Not you. Now, that has been a big topic of conversation on the VOG, and as we all know, when the Indians came out, it really attracted a lot of attention. And I'm not saying anything negative about it, as personally, I haven't seen them yet, other than in the photos. I haven't sat on it. But the big topic of conversation is it is a little bit more cramped than the equivalent Harley model. So you've been on both sides of the fence. Correct me where I'm wrong here and set the record straight.
Right up front, it is a little more cramped. On both of my Ultras, I had to use extended controls, but those are readily available on the wall at any Harley dealer.
And so what were your other thoughts after seeing the bike? I mean, you go up to it. Remember, it's a heritage bike. And Polaris, in my opinion, did a great job on the launch. Now they have to deliver the product. From a potential buyer, what was your thought on it?
I'm not quite sure why they changed the board system. So it's very much Victory-like. So why they didn't have it in the 3 movable positions, I don't quite understand. That probably would have been quite helpful.
Oh, it is fixed. There's no adjustments for a specific rider?
Exactly.
See, we learned something today. How about the seating? What did you think of that? I mean, not the position, the actual materials used.
Again, they've mimicked the Victory seat with a little bit of lumbar support, whereas the Kings Mountain bikes were more like an English saddle, more equestrian.
How did you feel when you said it? Now, we know, granted, you said that you felt a little cramped, but how did the seat feel in terms of the ability for the rider, the proper size, to ride long distances on that bike?
For one, the proper size, great. I mean, they'll just fit right in. And while I was there, a lot of people sitting on them, trying them, and the smaller statured riders immediately felt comfortable. Everything, like a Harley Ultra, the dashboard is closer to you. The engine and transmission are massive, so the center of gravity is very low on the bike.
Who do you think the market is for that bike?
That's a tough one. I really don't think anybody's going to come from an Ultra or that sort of thing to it. Even for me, from this bike, that's a trade down. So I think you're going to come up more from, somebody that wants to move from an 883 or Honda Shadow.
How about something like the Street Glide? Would this be considered a step up? Because it's in a similar price point.
Okay, I'm going to take hell for this, but no.
Any reasons why?
Just overall look and appearance.
So the Street Glide buyer, you think, wants something a little bit more modern. This is maybe a little bit more heritage?
Yeah. You got to be absolutely into the heritage thing. There's as far as aftermarket tweaking an Indian, you don't have the same options. A Street Glide, you need to go to one of the bike shows to see what can be done to one of those. And it was very evident at AVR what can be done to these. 200 bikes there, all slightly different, some enormously different, but they're the same foundation. If you start to change an Indian that much, an Indian heritage, it's not an Indian anymore, is it?
No, and I understand. And remember, we're seeing this from the point of view of a current Kings Mountain owner. And, like everybody else, everybody is entitled to their opinions, and especially on a VOG. We just don't tell people you have to think one way. Now, you talk about the import buyer come in. Do you see them coming from the typical Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, for example, the few that bought a Kawasaki Vaquero? What do you think their opinion would be of the new Indian?
Now, that's another one that would be a lateral trade or an up trade from a Vaquero.
Now, granted, and this is another thing that I've just read from people who have had first-hand experience, one of the first things you notice when you sit in a saddle is that unlike the cross bikes and unlike the Vision, where you have a very roomy cockpit, that there is distance. Somebody with my arm length has a hard time reaching the front buttons. What was your feeling when you first sat down on the bike with the new fairing on the Chieftain?
Because I've had two Ultras with the dash that close, that's not disturbing to me at all.
Now, one thing that's important to me, as it is, in my opinion, a major factor in these types of bikes, the sound. Were you able to hear it both stock and with the Stage 1 Level 1?
No, they didn't start them up. They were just static on the field.
So this was at the AVR. They were just there for display. Any test rides given?
No.
So any other closing comments about the new Indian lineup?
The only other thing on the Chieftain, one of my first thoughts when I saw the pictures of, you're going to have to put boards on the back. You probably don't want to. It's that close that I now understand why they put the peg and why it flows backward. Yeah, a board, you'd be running your shins into it constantly.
You think so on the Chieftain, kind of like the rear tip overs are on a Vision?
Yeah. Which I never had that problem.
I did it once, and typically most Vision owners do it only one time if they're fortunate. Let's talk about the bells and whistles that they're including on the new Indian and stock features. The Bluetooth, again, electric windscreen on the Chieftain models, the remote locking or keyless locking. What are your thoughts on the bells and whistles? And do you think they'll be coming to Victory in the near future?
They probably will cross over. It's, once the technology's there, they're going to start doing it. As far as remote locking bags, I think it's a little ridiculous.
How did that affect the interior of the room, of the bags on let's say on the Chieftain, a hard bag model with the remote locking? Where is the mechanism for that?
The mechanism is in the lid and takes up a goodly portion of it, and you're also dealing with a narrower, smaller bag in the first place.
Is it taking enough room where you're sacrificing storage?
I think when you get the bag packed, you're going to be shoving it down on it.
So we can keep in tradition with your wife that she's only going to be carrying one pair of shoes on that bike versus two on this one.
Yeah. That's the one thing I do like about my vintage, and I like my VGX before that. With a soft bag, you can always stuff something more in on top of it.
And I don't remember, we've talked about so many things, if we've discussed what your future is with the Chieftain. I know you had a deposit on one, you went to go see it, you weren't thrilled. Are you going to accept delivery, or have you passed your place in line to someone else?
No, I passed it. No, that's it.
Well, there's an extra one available up in Ontario right now, but I'll be honest with you, I think the initial pipeline is going to fill pretty quickly on that. It seems that there's, might not be thrilled, but there are other people my size or in between our sizes that this could be an ideal bike.
India dealerships, the ones that are done to the original specs, are great places as far as a showroom. And when you fill a showroom with these bikes, it's going to look tremendous.
Now, you've made a comment that in your travels, and when I say this guy does right, he does right, you've happened to find a dealer that, I don't want to say you've fallen in lust with, but it's become your preferred dealer out in middle America.
In Nebraska, yeah, Lincoln, Nebraska.
See, I do read your post.
Yeah, well, it's, as I'm going west, it's right on my way. There's only one Indian dealer in Toronto, and he's a multi-dealer. It's just as easy for me to drop by there for oil filters, parts like that.
What makes this dealer special? What gives it the experience that you just don't see in a lot of motorcycle dealerships these days?
Just the attitude. Their attitude about motorcycles, motorcyclists, brands, and service. There really isn't a big attitude about what you ride.
It's how you make friends along the way.
The Nebraska dealership is actually owned by the largest Honda dealer in Nebraska.
Really?
Yes.
And, that's interesting. And, I've owned all brands of bikes, and I've been fortunate that I've had pretty good service from just about all dealers, but I think a lot of it is in the way you treat them. What you usually get back what you give.
Exactly.
Okay, now we're back to the bike at hand here. How many miles do you have on your cross country?
There's about 7,500 miles on it now.
That's slacking for you. You know that. What have you had it, 2 weeks?
Well, I put 15,000 on the Indian, though.
Now, that's a good point. On your 2012 Indian Chief, and it is the Chief, right? That's the one you have. Sorry, I'm confused. You get to be my age, those things happen. How do you compare the ride of that model and this model on the highway for the type of riding you do?
The Chief, it's two different animals. It's going to be a weird comment and probably take some flack for it, but when I get on a Victory after being on the Indian, it's like a girl's bike.
Well, Bobby, with that comment, we're going to take a short break. If you're watching on YouTube, a very brief commercial interruption. If you're watching on the VOG, we're going to black, and we'll be right back. Okay, when we left just a moment ago, you made a comment about the girl's bike. Go back, rebuild this for us. Tell us what you're talking about here.
I'm just saying, in comparison, that's an immediate head thought when you get on it and start down the road. I can literally point this thing down the highway, put the cruise control on, take my hands off the bars for a half hour at a time.
Well, that speaks well of the balance and the dynamics of this bike.
Absolutely.
That makes it a girl's bike because it handles so well?
Then a girl could handle it.
Oh, listen to him. What were you born, 1920?
Maybe.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. And to me, and again, I've never owned a cross bike, but I put quite a few miles on a Vision. I love the balance. When you take a bike such as the Vision, you've owned them, I've owned them, somebody your size and my size can equally handle it well. I don't know if I'm as good a rider as you, but equally handle it well both in highway scenarios and around town. That speaks extremely well for center of balance or center of gravity and the balancing characteristics.
Once these bikes and the Visions are moving, they're very easy for anybody to handle. Some people do have a problem with these in parking lot circumstances, really low speed.
Okay, final question. There's still just a very few of these, 2014, and I don't want to say the whole name again, the 15th anniversary cross models currently available. What's your advice to somebody who might be shopping on this versus spending less money and just getting a cross-country tour?
It's subjective. The best way that, I thought about it, and the best way that I can put it is to compare the three bikes, because somebody asked me, what do I think about this? What do I think about my Kings Mountain? What do I think about the new Indian? And here's how I will put it. I paid $42,000 out the door for my Chief Vintage. It's been worth every penny.
Okay, now note that is Canadian price.
Yes. This bike was $33,000 plus tax Canadian. It's a little overpriced given that it doesn't have the reverse kit stage 1 or a couple of the other bells and whistles that were put on the original anniversary.
The Vision anniversary.
Yes. And the new Polaris Indian is worth every penny of $19,999.
Well, you got to admit, that is a great attractive price, and I do understand your opinion of it. Would you buy this bike again, or would you buy a cross-country tour if you had to pick between the two?
I'm not really impressed with the colors on most of the cross-country tour standards, so I would go for this again.
So the paint quality, in your mind, is worth the extra money. Bobby, I want to tell you, it is always a pleasure seeing you, and I will tell you, there'll probably be a travel log coming up. We have a fun dinner tonight. Your wife's coming in to join us. And, we've met up in a number of different cities around the country by mainly coincidence, and you've always been a great host. If I'm in your territory, tonight it's my treat. Again, thank you so much, and we appreciate everything you do for the VOG and for all the information you give to other riders.
Thank you, Andy.
For the VOG.net, I'm the Gadget Guru, Andy Parr, and I'll see you on the road and online.